Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Angela Parsons is a dedicated mother of three and a seasoned professional with a 20-year corporate career. Throughout her life, Angela has been passionate about healthy eating and leading an active lifestyle. Undiagnosed disorders made it an ongoing struggle for Angela to pursue her fitness goals. Despite her commitment to a whole foods, plant-based diet, Angela's health began to decline rapidly. Debilitating chronic pain and a range of unexplained symptoms left her searching for answers. Frustratingly, her concerns were often dismissed by doctors and health professionals, leading Angela to take matters into her own hands. On her journey, Angela found lipedema, Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, aka EDS, and a genetic variant that causes a sensitivity to the alkaloids in nightshades due to a, get ready for this, Butyrylcholinesterase enzyme deficiency. In pursuit of her health, Angela discovered her high-oxalate diet was adding to her symptoms. Motivated to find a solution, she transitioned to a carnivore diet, which brought about remarkable changes. Angela is on a mission to raise awareness about lipedema, EDS, and butyrylcholinesterase deficiency. You can find Angela at www.thehealingblossom.com. Angela Parsons, with an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. So excited for this.
Really excited to help you promote your work. I have to say, I'm already a little bit mad at you. Why could you not have chosen a syndrome or deficiency that was less than 21 letters? I spent a significant amount of time trying to learn how to pronounce it and barely got through it as is.
I'm just barely starting to type it without having to go correct the spelling on it every time. So,
oh my goodness, there's like 2 Y's in the first like 5 or 6 letters. Like, give me a break.
Yeah. I know, it's long.
Yeah. Next time, try to find a different condition that's a little bit easier to pronounce. That would be wonderful.
Yes.
Thanks in advance.
We'll just call it Bucci deficiency.
There we go. Perfect. Oh, that's great. Now, you work with my wife, Bethany. Is that correct?
Yes. I found Bethany searching for a way to help recover from a lot of the pain that I've been experiencing. I actually found her through a post that you made in a carnivore group on Facebook, and came across your Boundless Body, and then found Bethany through that and decided I'm going to book this and see if it works for me, which it did. It was great. She got me walking straight.
That's fantastic. It was an honest question. I actually didn't know that's how you met.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, that's fantastic. Do you remember which carnivore page it was?
I don't. I don't even remember how I found it, but I saw it, started clicking, and found Bethany that way.
That's fantastic. I always have to ask Bethany's clients whether they are coming to see her to get into pain, like personal training session or Pilates, or to get out of pain, which is her tissue work. So it always goes one way or another.
Yes. And I needed to get out of pain. So
there you go. Excellent. Well, hopefully that is going well. You have such an amazing story. And Bethany told me a little bit about you and a little bit about your story, which led us to book this as an appointment, because I think this is a really underexplored topic. I think the awareness is coming out a little bit more, especially in the ketogenic and low carbohydrate space. I see people talking about it a little bit more, but it's like you and I were talking offline. I've seen stats that it's up to 1 in 10 women have this, which would mean, like, I don't know, 16, 17 million women, right, would be diagnosed with this and are left undiagnosed. Is that true?
Yeah. And there are different stages of the disease, and most women who do get diagnosed aren't diagnosed till age 48. And a lot of time they're in stage 3 at that point. And most women just go on with life not knowing and blaming themselves for the lack of success in losing weight, because they don't know that they have this disorder. But it's super common. I mean, I walk around and I see women all the time and I'm like, oh, she's got lipedema. Oh, she definitely has lipedema. And some, it's like, I'm not sure if that's lipedema or obesity or a combination, but I can look at it and see it. But I had symptoms since very early on. And, I had so many struggles in trying to lose weight and be fit. My goal was to get fit, and I tried everything and nothing was working. And when I would go to doctors or, the fitness instructors or personal trainers or nutritionists, the blame was always put on me. And that wasn't fair. There was a disorder and it happens to be very common. It's just that people don't know about it and they need to know about it, because getting diagnosed early is crucial in managing it. Because if you don't know you have it, it can progress rapidly.
Interesting. Wow. Well, I'm so grateful for your journey and for your willingness to share the message. You started your website, which has a wonderful blog, which tells the story from, you're right, like a very young age. So why don't we start there with, in hindsight, looking back at your childhood, especially, did you know that something was different about you, something was wrong, or did you just, I don't know, did you not realize that something was wrong, I guess?
I did. I realized something was wrong maybe around age 10. It could have been a little bit earlier. I don't remember. But my mom, for example, she would often comment on my bubble butt. And she would also talk about her great legs and that I didn't inherit them. I had step siblings that were very, very thin. And I was actually pretty average kid. I was not overweight at all, but they called me fat. And it's because the hip and upper thigh area of my body was fuller than most kids. And then I would get a little bit of kind of fat in the armpit area, but I would have like really skinny arms and, flat stomach and not obese at all. So I noticed that looking at some of my photos at age 10, I can see it now. And back then I felt it and I became self-conscious because of my step siblings. But I believe that was the early stages because that's where my lipedema started, was in my hips and upper thighs. And then around age 11, I started having issues with falling down and rolling my ankles. I developed scoliosis and, my dad took me to the doctor and the doctor diagnosed me with scoliosis, but he never looked at my hypermobility that was in my legs and arms. He didn't look at the cause of the scoliosis, which is usually related to our connective tissue. And I struggled in gym class. I hated gym. I just, by age 11, like, running hurt. I was always falling. I just could not do sit-ups and push-ups, no matter how much I tried. And so I was getting a D in gym class. My gym teachers would always yell at me, and personal trainers throughout my life too, like, Angela, stop locking your legs. And I'm like, I'm just standing. Like, didn't understand what they meant by that. But my doctor who diagnosed me with lipedema found that at least 60% of her patients that have lipedema are also hypermobile. And I believe she mentioned a doctor in Germany found at least 80% of his lipedema patients are hypermobile. So there's a connection there. Not to say that all people who are hypermobile will get lipedema, but lipedema is considered a loose connective tissue disorder, where EDS is a connective tissue disorder, and they're co-conditions. So then as I got into puberty, the boys, I'd walk down the hall and I could hear them just talking about my fat ass. And here I am, I'm still not an overweight girl, and this is back before Sir Mix-a-Lot came out with his song. So all the girls were all very thin and small butts, and I had this big butt. And at that point, like, I could no longer share clothes with my mom because I couldn't get them around my hips. And I would have to wear bigger sizes of pants just to get them around my hips, but then they'd be really big in my waist. So I just stopped wearing jeans altogether, and I grew to love leggings early on in life. And then I became embarrassed about wearing short skirts or swimsuits because I thought I had cellulite and up in that upper thigh area and behind. And I just assumed that's what it was. And I got a gym membership when I was 16. I really tried to focus on eating healthy. I had gotten a job at McDonald's and asked the thin manager, like, how do you stay thin working here? Because, we got discounted food. She's like, oh, I have a gym membership. Um, I also keep under 20 grams of fat a day, and I don't eat the French fries. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't really like the French fries anyway, so I'll just make sure I don't touch them. I'll stay under 20 grams of fat a day, which was not very smart. And went to the gym, and it really didn't make a difference in losing any of the weight in my legs. It helped in other areas, but it just continued to be a struggle. And then around age 19, I lived in this apartment briefly before I was getting married, and there was so many bugs. It was so gross. And I slept with a can of Raid on my nightstand and was spraying it constantly in my room, which is super unhealthy to do. And
Right.
I didn't know. We had Raid at home when I was a kid, and my mom used it in the house all the time. And, I had no idea how that was going to affect me. But my weight ballooned up that year. I think I gained at least 35 pounds. And then my doctor put me on Fen-Phen. And that's when Fen-Phen was legal. And I only used it for a few months. It totally disabled my appetite. I'd forget to eat and gave me tons of energy. So I cleaned the house. And, I was taken off of it because the drug became illegal. And I didn't have any of the heart difficulties that they say caused in some women. But
I was just going to say, I was going to ask if you recalled exactly why it got taken off. I can't remember. It was heart stuff.
Yeah, it was heart problems that it was causing, because I had to have an echocardiogram to make sure that my heart was okay. And but yeah, I was only on it for a few months, and it was just that last 10 pounds I didn't get to lose. But then from there, I had moved in to a house where we didn't have a landscaped yard. And so I was always out trying to keep the weeds out. So I went out with Roundup every day and was spraying it. And during this time, I went through major chronic fatigue issues and insomnia issues. I couldn't fall asleep till maybe around 1 a.m. And then I couldn't get up for work, and it was a struggle. And taking a shower was exhausting, and I'd have to sit down to do my makeup. And then I couldn't even drive myself to work. So my first husband at the time, he would always have to drive me and drop me off, because if I drove, it's just the hum of the road, and 15 minutes would knock me out, and it was dangerous. So he drove me to and from work, which was okay. My work was on the way to his. And then I started developing lipoma in my arm, and it was painful. And had gone to the doctor, and he assumed that maybe it was an cyst or an infection, and put me on antibiotics. And I was on them for months.
Wow.
And that destroyed my gut. And I eventually just moved away from that house, wasn't using the Roundup, and it ended up getting better. But I still had problems with sleep, getting up in the morning, and then just my weight was a constant battle. And I ended up in my 20s, my immune system was beaten down. I would catch cold after cold after cold. It seemed like I was just sick all the time. My friend called me a hypochondriac, but I was really sick. And I would get bronchitis at least 4 times a year and be put on antibiotics. Strep, the flu, I would just catch everything. And I went to my doctor and I said, I'm gaining weight because I'm sick all the time, so I can't work out. And I just don't understand why I keep getting sick. Other people that I work with, they're not getting sick like I am. I'm just catching everything that comes in the office. And she told me it's because I wasn't taking my Advair daily. And if I took my Advair daily, I would not get sick like that anymore. And I didn't believe her. I just thought that didn't make any sense at all.
You didn't think you were Advair deficient?
Yes. So I decided I needed to figure this out for myself, because I'd gone to the doctor numerous times. I had tons of digestive problems. I'd seen a GI doctor. She told me just to take Lactate, and I I wasn't getting through with the doctors. I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't getting any help. So I ended up just wandering around Whole Foods going, okay, something here is going to help me. Something here is going to help fix my immune system and help me lose weight. And I came across Dr. Hyman's detox box. And it was just a little booklet and flashcards that teach you how to do yoga, meditation, hot and cold showers, and then you completely overhaul your diet. But it's supposed to just be for 30 days. And the diet was just salmon, brown rice, steamed veggies, and then rice protein shakes, like plain rice, unsweetened protein shakes, ground flax, and you could use some berries to sweeten it. And I think that was it. There might have been flax. Yeah, there's flax oil, and then bentonite clay and psyllium. So I did this thing for 30 days and I was amazed about how great I felt. But at the time, I thought it was eating more, whole foods, plant-based that put me on that track. And the diet itself was super hard to sustain. I just could not wait to finish it. But I remained like gluten-free and dairy-free after that diet, and ended up really increasing oxalates and nightshades. And I started having some more issues. I started gaining weight again after I had lost weight. I didn't put the fact together that these other plant foods were harming me and making me gain weight. And I had watched, read all of Dr. Hyman's books. I read a whole bunch of other books about detoxing and plant-based diets and all of those documentaries that are out there about eating plant-based. And I was convinced that I just needed to eat these plants and, no processed foods, which at that point I was fine. I cut all processed foods out of my diet, with the exception of some protein powders and Lara bars and a few other things that I was eating. But I really decided that I wanted to be fit and I'm going to get rid of this fat in my legs. And at the time, I had a boyfriend that told me in a drunken stupor that he did not want to marry me and have a kid with me because I would blow up like a pumpkin and never lose the weight.
Oh my
Because
God.
he could see me struggling and to try and maintain my weight. And he had said that. So I did leave him. But, I was really hurt by it. I was frustrated. And I moved on to my current husband, and we were dating, and he is super fit cyclist. He rides up our canyons, he'll ride 100 miles a day. He's even done the 200-mile low to jaw race. And he inspired me to really get fit. And I got a bike and I wanted to start cycling. I started training for triathlons and century rides. I started a couch to 5K because I really hated running and it hurt me, but I figured I'm just going to just tough it out, right? No pain, no gain, and just do it. And I did. And, the pain increased. And while I did end up doing a 100 km race and completing it in tears, I didn't understand why all the other super skinny women in the races were eating Swedish fish and, potato chips and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, after the races or as their snacks, to fuel their energy. And I was eating chia soaked in coconut water with cold sweet potato slices for my energy, because there was no way I was going to eat that other stuff.
Yeah.
And, I was still struggling and my legs were getting bigger. And, early on when I did that detox box, the lipedema was just still in the hips and upper thighs. At this point in 2011 and 2012, when I was doing these races, the lipedema was now visible down to my knee. And so I had really worked hard and I was super frustrated, and I was just told the same thing, calories in, calories out, just same thing over and over. And all the different diet advice, like I did everything, did everything the personal trainers would tell me to do, the fitness instructors, the nutritionists, I did everything and just kept trying different things. And all the different exercises, CrossFit, Pilates, yoga, Zumba, like just everything. And I finally, I'd got strep a couple of times, and my doctor said, okay, you're going to need a tonsillectomy because you have like this huge hole in your tonsils and everything's just getting caught back there. And we need to do a tonsillectomy. My friend, she's like, oh, I lost 20 pounds when I had my tonsillectomy. And, I didn't even have 20 pounds to lose. So be careful because it's an easy way to lose weight. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is it. I'll be so sick. I won't be able to eat and I'll lose weight.
Wow.
And so I came prepared to my tonsillectomy with coconut water and aloe juice popsicles and veggie broth, because back then it was the veggie broth, not the bone broth that I was trying to consume to get healthy. And, I woke up from surgery and they're trying to hand me a Coca-Cola and applesauce. And I'm like, no, I don't want this. They're like, what? You need to start drinking something. I'm like, give me water. Like, don't give me a Coke in the hospital. I'm waking up from surgery.
Crazy. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. So, I sucked on those popsicles, and they were actually the aloe was very soothing to my throat, and I recovered quite well, but I didn't lose any weight, none at all. And later that year, I started noticing that I was swelling or getting fat, is what I thought, in my arms, and I suddenly had a little pouch stomach. I mean, I had issues with bloating, obviously, from my diet that I thought was so healthy. But I was just slowly getting bigger. And we had engagement photos booked in Mexico on the beach. And I just worked my butt off because I wanted to look so good in those photos. And I got there and I was in tears because I looked so much bigger. And I didn't realize that when you have lipedema, when you get on an airplane, you're going to have more problems with swelling. And you're supposed to wear compression on an airplane. And since I didn't know I had lipedema, I didn't know anything about that, but I got there to do my photos and I just wanted to cry.
Wow.
And, my photos ended up looking pretty good because I'm sure they were touched up, but, I can see a photo of me on the top of the Koba pyramid. And, I can just see there's swelling in the arms and the stomach and the legs are bigger. And I just kept blaming myself, like I wasn't doing enough. But at this point, like I was having more pain and problems. And I was in an aerial silks class. I don't know if you know what aerial silks are.
Yeah.
They're the big fabric that you,
Yep.
yeah, it was like a yoga class, but they taught us a lot of the aerial silks moves. And the very first move that I was able to do was the splits. Nobody else in the class could do it. So I was super proud of myself
That's
for doing
great.
the splits. Yeah. But I didn't know that you're not supposed to be able to do that. And that was a sign of the hypermobility and EDS. But I was proud. I'm like, yes, this is a fitness thing that I can do. And I kept coming back but I just wasn't progressing. I couldn't do any of the other moves that required a lot of upper body strength. And one day I was really trying, and the instructor yelled at me and she said, Angela, the reason why you're not improving is because you're not trying hard enough. And so
Please.
yeah. So I pushed myself just a little bit more and injured my hand, and I couldn't even go back to do it because the pain was so much. So Like, and that was pretty much the story of my life of dealing with fitness classes, like trying to do squats. I could not do squats, and they were trying to push my hips down and trying to push me, make me go down further because I wasn't going down far enough, and I just couldn't do them. And I didn't know why. So I'm blaming myself again. And but then the pain that I had been experiencing was getting greater. Like it was, before if I was on my bike for an hour, then my hands and elbows and feet would start to hurt. But now it's like I couldn't even do it for 10 minutes because I was starting to hurt. And I just started getting bigger all over. And I was still doing Pilates and yoga and walking all the time, and just I would commute on my bike to work when I could, even when there was still snow on the ground. If it was a sunny day, I would do it. Just anything to get whatever exercise I could. It wasn't the full 2 hours or 4 hours like I was doing before, but I just was getting bigger. So,
were you tracking your food at the time?
oh yeah, I had food logs. I had food scales. I measured everything. I was doing all of that
Would it be
since
safe to
I was
say?
19.
Yeah, well, yeah, it sounds like it. So would it be safe to say that you were in a caloric deficit at this time?
Oh yeah, I wasn't eating enough calories for sure.
Okay.
But I know I just kept cutting back the calories, and then I thought, well, maybe I need to cut the fat back, because this is like 2011 and 12 when I was doing all the 2-hour a day workouts. And when I wasn't getting the success, then I'm like, okay, so they say fat's good, but maybe it's too many calories. Maybe I need to cut fat again. So I cut out, I was using olive oil for my own dressing that I would make with, mustard and turmeric and lemon. And so I started cutting back the olive oil, thinking I'm just getting too many calories. And yeah, I wasn't really getting enough. And that's pretty common with women with lipedema, is they don't eat enough food.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like, the way I kind of describe it to somebody is if you're trying to follow the calories in, calories out model, it's like being on a treadmill that's constantly like speeding up, and you can keep
Mhm.
up with it for a while. But at some point, you're going to be spit out the back of the treadmill, because it's like you can't continue lowering and lowering and lowering your calories and increasing the amount of calories you burn. It's just not, it's going to get to this point where it's not going to work. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And, and the calories in, calories out is just really bad advice, especially for someone with lipedema.
Yeah.
And it was maddening. And I'm sure I wasn't doing my body good. I was maybe more pescatarian at the time. I was eating fish and all these vegetables and making smoothies, just huge plates of greens. And then I would just drizzle with the special dressing that I made, and just really wanting to heal and really wanting to be fit. And then, I'd still just get comments like, I had a friend I'd been friends with for a long time, and she'd seen my weight go up and down and up and down. And when I first started dating my husband, she said to me, "Isn't it weird to be with someone that's so much more fit than you?" And I'm like,
Good Lord. How are you not like fully traumatized at this point with all of these comments? These are
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. And so I took it as jealousy. And, I we weren't friends much after that. We're Facebook acquaintances, and that's about it.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was super frustrating. And, you know, I just wasn't getting answers anywhere. And, I think the part that really made it frustrating was all the pain that I started feeling. And, some of that fatigue started coming back, and not the severe fatigue that I had around the time I was using Roundup, um, I was struggling to go for my walks. I was struggling to go on my rides. My body was hurting. And during this time, we were going through fertility treatments. We also had taken in my nephew. He was being abused, and he was only 14 months, and his parents just weren't taking care of him, and we took him in, and it ended up being very stressful for us. And that's a whole nother story. But, I'm sure that contributed to things progressing and getting worse. And, when I was doing fertility treatments, I was at my highest weight, which is about 165, and just seeing my legs grow. So I was now never wearing skirts that showed my knees because my knees looked fat. And then my calves were looking fat as well. And then my arms were getting huge, and I got pregnant, and, it just progressed from there. But the pregnancy was incredibly painful. When I would address the pain with my doctor, she would just say, "Oh, it's a geriatric pregnancy." And, I even had the DTaP vaccine during the pregnancy, and that increased my pain immensely. And when I told my doctor, she's like, "It's a geriatric pregnancy. It wasn't the vaccine." And I really, really wanted to have a healthy pregnancy. I wanted to make sure that my baby was going to be healthy. And I was eating so many plants, nightshades especially, and especially trying to avoid dairy. When you cut out dairy out of your diet, you use salsa on everything instead of dressings. And, the diet is what was causing all the pain and sickness. And I didn't know, and I didn't have any guidance from doctors, nutritionists, anything. I read so many pregnancy books, and, before the pregnancy, I read one that had suggested more of a meat-based diet, and I had incorporated some meat and eggs in my diet, and I attributed that to being able to get pregnant in the first place. But I was still eating a ton of nightshades. So, postpartum was horrible. I couldn't produce enough milk, even though my cup size, which had been a D or C previously before the lipedema was spreading, was now a G. But I wasn't making enough milk, and I just couldn't fit into any of my old clothes, and I couldn't exercise because of the pain. And I took my 3 months off of work, and I went back to work for 3 months, and I just couldn't do it anymore. The pain was so bad. The insomnia, my baby had started sleeping through the night, but I wasn't sleeping good. The brain fog was intense. I just couldn't remember things. And the fatigue was so bad. Like, I just didn't want to get out of bed each day, but I had a baby, and I had a 4-year-old to take care of at the time. And I went to my doctor, and I told her, I said, "I've got all these lumps growing all over my body." And she's like, "Oh, those are just lipomas." I said, "But they hurt." And she's like, "Well, lipomas aren't supposed to hurt, but they just look like lipomas." And I'm like, "Well, why do I have so many?" And she couldn't answer that. And I said, "My legs really hurt. My arms ache. They ache like when you get the flu, and you just hurt all over." And I said, "My feet hurt. Like, I can't walk." And I'm like, "I just can't. It's so hard to get out of bed each day. And I've got to take care of my kids, but I just want to stay in bed." And she said, "Well, some people can't get out of bed when they have fatigue." And I'm like,
Thanks.
"Okay, yeah." So I have to take care of kids. So I kind of have to get out, but my fatigue's pretty bad. She just blew it off,
Thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really great.
Yeah.
Noted.
And then she ended up diagnosing me with plantar fasciitis as the cause of my foot pain, and then blamed the rest on my hormones. She did do some labs. I don't recall which ones, but the labs are all normal. And she just said, "You just have to, once you stop breastfeeding, then, everything will level out and you'll be fine." And I stopped breastfeeding about 11 months, and, you know, 12 months postpartum, like I still had all this pain and fatigue. And I was in a mom nursing group still. I hadn't ended the membership there. And a lady had posted about her recent diagnosis of lipedema. And she posted pictures of herself, which, it's very vulnerable to post pictures of yourself on the internet. But it was a private nursing group. And I saw those photos and I'm like, those are my legs. Those are my arms. That is my stomach. Like, this has got to be what's wrong. And I then joined a lipedema group. And, a lot of the women in the group are much further progressed. So I questioned whether or not I actually had it because I didn't look as progressed as them. But, I realized it was correct. I went back to my doctor. I told her about it. She'd never heard about it and just blew me off. So then I went back home and I printed out all the literature I could find on it and pictures and then brought it to her. And she agreed that my legs did look like I had it, but she wasn't sure about my arms or my stomach or my breasts, just that she thought that was likely in my legs. And then I did not know, and she didn't know, if all of the lipomas all over my body had anything to do with it.
Interesting.
And
Do you think we could
yeah.
maybe explain here what exactly lipedema is?
Yeah. And I will read it. Actually, no, I can explain it.
You're good either way.
Yeah. So what lipedema does is it causes the body to build fibrotic fat. Okay. So rather than the smooth fat that obesity causes, it's fibrotic and it's lumpy. So it can feel like peas or beads or walnuts under the skin. And it's just, it's irregularly distributed. So for some women, they may just have column legs. Some, it's like for me, it was in the hips and thighs and then eventually moved down the legs. Some can have it just in their arms, but most women who have lipedema will also have it in the legs and in the arms. It's not really confirmed that it can be in the breasts, but like I said, I was a C. I'm triple D now, and my breasts have not gone down. Even after, like they said, after nursing, your breasts will shrink. No, they did not. But my doctor who diagnosed me did tell me that she believes that lipedema is in the breasts. She just doesn't inspect breasts, so she couldn't confirm it. But when all that fat keeps building and it's so fibrotic, the lymphatic fluid cannot get through it. So it gets stagnant in there and then causes the swelling. So there's lymphedema, which most people think I'm saying when I say lipedema. Doctors always try to correct me, and I have to explain to them it's not lymphedema. It's not lipidemia, it's lipedema. And so all these areas where I have the lipedema, they swell. So you have to wear compression to keep the fluid out of the tissue. It can be painful. The fat can be painful when you press on it, or for some, it just may ache or burn. For me, I never had pain while pressing on it until after I had my hip replacement, which is another story. And so now it's painful to the touch on that side. And that side is actually bigger than my right. Where also with lipedema, you can have issues with chronic fatigue. My doctor had stated in a presentation last month about a lot of the same symptoms that women have with lipedema are the same as fibromyalgia. So I don't know if all of the pain that I have is related to lipedema or EDS. I actually now have a doctor who is kind and is trying to help me figure things out.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank God.
And just diagnosed me with my official EDS diagnosis of HEDS or hypermobile EDS. So
got it.
I'm thankful to finally have that.
Yeah, seriously.
It's just validating.
Yeah.
And with lipedema, when it's not managed well, it will rapidly progress and you can develop lymphedema. When you have lipedema and lymphedema, it's called lipolymphedema. So there's a lot of wonderful pictures out there on the internet, and lipedema.org is a great website that has videos and pictures of what lipedema looks like in different stages of women and different shapes of women as well. But yeah.
That was a really good explanation.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, what was I going to tell you next? I lost my train of thought there.
Well, and I cut you off so that we could explain what lipedema was.
Oh yeah.
But in at least in your personal story, it sounds like you were to the point where you found it, you got your doctor convinced, you were printing things out and kind of learning about it as you were going. Is that right?
Yeah. And since I had so many questions that my doctor couldn't answer, whether or not it was in my upper body and stomach and all of that, and these lipomas all over my body, I'd also come across in the lipedema groups about another disorder called Durcum's disease, which causes the lipomas all over the body. And it's actually very painful. It's one of the most painful diseases. And I think it may be a type of autoimmune disease that's pretty rare. So I didn't know if my lipomas were Durcum's disease, and maybe that would explain why I have pain. So I ended up booking with Dr. Karen Hertz, and she was at a clinic at Banner Medical in Tucson, Arizona. And at the time, I think she's booked out about a year wait list to see her. And when I finally saw her, it was 2019. And I had been working out, like swimming multiple days a week, going for walks. I had, at that point, had taken out nightshades out of my diet, and which gave me some of the strength and energy to continue to start exercising again. And when I saw her, I also brought some photos from my younger years, kind of showing, a comparison of me and my mom and her very thin legs and my larger legs. And she agreed that I had lipedema, and she palpitated my body and felt where I had all the lipomas, and also said that I likely had venous insufficiency, which is common with lipedema. And the lipomas she felt were familial multiple lipomatosis. So the reason why she diagnosed me with that was because before going to the appointment, I reached out to my family and asked if anybody had lipomas, and my dad and my brother did. But my brother said his did not hurt. My dad said his sometimes hurts. And I felt mine were definitely painful if I had nightshades in my diet, or caffeine even. And the reason why caffeine is because it also inhibits the cholinesterase enzymes related to that butyrylcholinesterase deficiency. So
nailed it.
Yeah. So at the time they weren't hurting as long as I kept those out of my diet. And she just decided that that's what I had. And most people, I guess, don't have pain. And I don't know if the pain I was feeling was lipedema. And it's just like with venous insufficiency, the aching in my legs, is that lipedema or venous insufficiency? Like, I don't really know. And then she also, I asked her about the breast. She's like, I don't inspect breasts, but it's likely that it's there. And had just told me to, keep wearing compression, which I had been doing. And, she gave me a printout of everything that we had talked about. So it was very validating to see her, and knowing that my big arms were not my fault, and my stomach. And it was good to see her. And, since then I've seen doctors for various things, and they just don't know anything about it. I've found one doctor this year that had heard of it, but he's not confident in diagnosing it. And that was a vein doctor that I see for my venous insufficiency. And but he just barely found out about it. And then I had an OB, a nurse practitioner that had stepped in for my OB that knew about it. So, the doctors are starting to learn, but they're still not confident in diagnosing it, because when it's an early stage, it's hard to figure out if it's cellulite or if it's lipedema. And if you have obesity in addition to the lipedema, it can be hard to figure out. So it's a lot easier if you can get rid of your regular fat and you're just left with lipedema, and it's a bit easier to diagnose. The problem is a lot of women with lipedema also have difficulty losing their regular fat, their obesity fat. And that was the struggle that I've been going through with in the last part of my story that I'm working on my website, is explaining how I continued to try everything, wasn't eating enough calories. I mean, even when I was nursing, part of the reason I wasn't making enough milk is because I wasn't eating enough calories. But my body, it's supposed to, use the fuel from my body, right? That your body stores in pregnancy to use for nursing. As everybody always told me that the fat just melts away when you nurse. And that just wasn't happening. But Thanksgiving, I went off my diet and enjoyed a Thanksgiving dinner. And suddenly the next day I had milk.
Yeah. Wow.
So I know I wasn't eating enough calories,
Yeah.
even nursing. And yeah, it's amazing. But, I wanted to, I want to tell a lot of women out there about lipedema, but also the women who have lipedema, what I've found that actually has helped get rid of the regular fat. Because when I had my second baby, which we did IVF right after I saw Dr. Hertz in 2019. And at that point, when I decided to do IVF, I had learned about the EDS and the lipedema and the butyrylcholinesterase deficiency. And I did not want to pass those down at all. But we knew we needed one more baby. So we ended up going with a donor for the egg. So I would not be passing my genetics down, because my first daughter, I didn't know about any of that. And it's likely that she's got EDS, and hopefully she doesn't develop lipedema, but she does have the butyrylcholinesterase deficiency. And, I don't want to pass those genes down again. So my daughter that we had in 2020, beautiful, healthy baby girl, and no signs of EDS with her. So, but after I had her, I had a lot of hip pain, and the pregnancy itself was pretty easy because I kept nightshades out of my diet. And I did not have any pain until I did that damn DTaP vaccine. And then it just triggered pain throughout my body, and my uterus was spasming. So I had to stay off my feet the rest of the pregnancy because I worried about me going into labor, and I shouldn't have done it. Wow. And I guess I believed my first doctor when she said it was a geriatric pregnancy, but nope, it wasn't. There were other factors that were causing that pain. And then I was just in pain for a long time after that. And my hips hurt so bad. I was in PT the whole time I was pregnant to help reduce pain. And then I went back and I was in PT for several months. And she just told me, I don't know why you're not getting better. So I went home and Googled hip injuries in childbirth and EDS and came up with labral tears. So I went back and I said, I think I have a labral tear. And she's like, no, I checked you for that. You don't have that. You weren't in an accident. And I said, well, but I have EDS, or at least I think I do, according to, one of the doctors. And she said, no, that's not it. But I do agree that you need imaging. So she told me to go to my doctor. I go to my doctor. She said, you just need to find a new PT. So, so I'm back to my PT and I asked her to write a letter, and she's very hesitant, but she did it. And then my doctor finally ordered imaging, and I had an MRI, and I had complex labral tear, glute tendinosis, osteoarthritis, and little or no cartilage. And then I was referred to a surgeon who also said that I had hip dysplasia. So we're not sure. The doctor I'm working with now, he's checking for genetic skeletal disorders to see if that could be the cause of my hip dysplasia and my scoliosis, or if it's just related to the EDS. But my daughter, my 6-year-old daughter, has the hip dysplasia too, and it wasn't caught when she was young. And I had to push for her to get imaging done because they told me she wasn't born dislocated, so she doesn't have hip dysplasia. And I'm like, I wasn't born dislocated, but I have hip dysplasia and I have EDS. So I ended up having to get a hip replacement, and that did cause some progression on that side of my hip. And it was a very rough recovery for me. And that's one thing that your wife has really helped me with, is getting those hips straight. My pelvis tends to tilt and I get very lopsided, or my leg feels longer than the other. And I wasn't able to really walk straight and walk without pain. And she's helped me with that immensely.
That's
So
great.
yes.
Yeah, that's great. Wow.
So
when did you encounter the carnivore diet?
So I encountered carnivore last year. I started seeing a few women with lipedema post about it because they said keto did not work for them, but they switched to carnivore and they had success. So I asked my doctor if I could do the carnivore diet, and she said, no, stick to keto. You still need to eat all your greens. So I continued. And at the time, I had gout, I had tennis elbow, I had kidney pain that my doctors just said, oh, it's just your back, but it was my kidneys. I know that I have lots of pain. I know the difference between my kidneys and my back. And I had severe dry skin. My eyes were so dry that I could not get my contacts in without 3 vials of Renew eye drops every day. And it'd take about 30 minutes of getting those eye drops in my eyes. I was extremely thirsty all the time, despite drinking lots of water. And just all my joints hurt. I'm like, I'm not eating nightshades. I'm eating low carb. I didn't understand why I was still having all these problems. And my doctor was running tests and said that I had hypercalcemia, and sent me to an endocrinologist where they said I had high testosterone and really high DHEA, and still had the hypercalcemia. They ran all the tests for parathyroid and kidney issues, and they didn't really know why I was having all these issues. So I would kind of dabbled with eating carnivore a few days a week, and then eating more ketovore or keto on the weekends. And I just wasn't having any luck doing that. And I had realized last summer that when I went out of town to Spring City, they have fresh spring water there. When I drank the spring water, I felt better. And I would come back home and I would drink the water here, which we have soft water with a whole house filtration system. The kidney pain would come back and a lot of the dryness would worsen.
Wow.
So I'm like, what is going on? So I started drinking spring water to help. And then my doctor told me, if you're eating spinach, don't eat that because that's a problem. So just take that out of your diet, but eat all the other greens. And so I continued to do that. And then during the holiday season, it's kind of birthday season from fall through winter, I make my kids the Simple Meals almond flour cakes, and with an avocado chocolate frosting, and they love them. But they're super high in oxalates, and I did not know what oxalates were. And so after Christmas, I was in so much pain. I gained 10 pounds despite sticking to a keto diet through the holidays. And fatigue was so immense. Like I had to nap just like when I was pregnant, had to nap every day when my toddler was napping. And I was so frustrated. And somebody in a carnivore group posted a video with Sally Norton and I believe it was Dr. Anthony Chafee. And I don't always watch the videos that are posted in the groups because I'm just a busy mom and don't have time to sit and watch stuff, but you occasionally will just browse through things. And I decided to watch that video. And I mean, it was life-changing. And I watched another video of Sally Norton, and I think she listed all of those symptoms I was having, except for the hypercalcemia and the high DHEA and testosterone, but everything else, like she listed. And I realized that, oh my God, I'm eating so many oxalates in my diet, and I'm feeding my kids all these oxalates. So I decided to cut oxalates out of our diet and just see what happens. Well, I felt pretty great immediately. And I decided to eat carnivore since I had been observing in those groups and just sticking to carnivore and not eating any vegetables like my doctor wanted me to. And I just couldn't believe it. And like all the regular fat and swelling and everything just went away.
Wow.
And just like quickly within a few months, it was gone. And almost all of my pain is gone. And the plantar fasciitis in one foot is gone, but I still have it in the other foot. Whenever I see your wife and she helps me, I usually go through a big oxalate dump after we've worked the tissue, and that's fine. Those are very short-lived. But another thing that was really amazing with the oxalates and getting them out of our diet was my 6-year-old, the one that has EDS. She also has about 4 different skin conditions. So like severely dry skin, like she never felt baby soft. And her skin is just getting drier and drier and drier as every year went on. And she also had keratosis pilaris, which are the little bumps, and they're usually just on the back of the arms, but she had them all over her arms and legs and back and butt. And she also has ichthyosis, which kind of gives like a kind of fish scale looking dryness to the skin. And then she's also had some eczema problems in the past as well. So all of her skin conditions healed in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And the things that we cut out of her diet were sweet potatoes, because I used to just, for the family each day, slice up one sweet potato and drizzle a little bit of olive oil and, some sea salt and put it in the oven and give everybody a few slices. And almond butter. She liked almond butter. I also made them smoothies, sometimes with spinach, and not all the time, but I did use spinach a lot. And I also had put almond butter in that, and, raspberries and chia seeds and hemp hearts and, collagen peptides and what else? Well, banana and stuff like that. But I took all the high oxalate stuff out of the smoothies. One of my kids still loves smoothies, and I just make them low oxalate now, no grains. And let's see, hummus was another thing that she used to like to eat, hummus and carrots. So we took that out, and it was really just those foods, just taking those out of her diet, and her skin felt soft for the first time in a long time, and all the bumps were gone. The problem is she's a kid, and daddy likes French fries, brother likes French fries, and I can try to keep it out of her diet, but she'll still get some in her diet. And really one day of eating French fries and all of those bumps will come back.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. If I hadn't heard a similar story to that so many times on repeat, I would think you were absolutely nuts. I
Yeah.
was so fortunate enough to meet Sally Norton in person and personally thank her for her work. She's an absolute angel. She's such a sweetheart. We had such a good time hanging out together. And to be able to thank her for all the work that she's done. I mean, she stood on stage at KetoCon to say that some of your most beloved keto foods, like spinach, like sweet potatoes, like the almond flour is
Yeah.
terrible for you, and just the courage to be able to do that at KetoCon, I think was so awesome. Her work is amazing. This story is absolutely incredible and mind blowing. And like I said, if I hadn't heard so many carnivore stories over the years, I wouldn't think it would be as miraculous as it was.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Now that you're in a phase where you're trying to share your message, you're trying to raise
Mhm.
awareness. You mentioned that catching this early can be really helpful. What would you want people to take away from this conversation and know about how to identify it either in themselves or in their children or in some of their loved ones? What would you want somebody to walk away from this conversation knowing about this condition, lipedema?
I would say, you know, go with your gut. Like if you're doing everything right, and you know, the other thing is what we're taught is right isn't always right. And that was the problem I was having, is the whole foods plant-based diet, which I was told was going to heal me, did not. And don't be afraid to try carnivore and see how that diet can heal you. But just to watch those areas of your body and to get on the internet, become familiar with what lipedema looks like. And I wish I could say just go to your doctor and they can help you, but they can't. There are doctors out there that can, but you really have to search and look for them. And catching it early, it's so hard because some women are noticing it in childhood and maybe others are not. But for my daughter, I'm going to keep a close eye on her. And if she starts to show that, the fullness in her hips and thighs like I did, I'm going to put her in compression and just compression leggings and just regular yoga compression leggings. Like, some of the ones that I have are Blanky or Zella. I'm just going to put her in those and that will help. I wish I had known about the compression leggings. I was wearing, cheapies that don't have any compression because they help a lot. And
Mm.
then just keeping the lymphatic fluid moving, dry skin brushing or vibration plates, and exercise. It definitely helped when I exercise. I just think that my diet was the cause of all of that swelling. So,
Yeah. Well, that is really practical and helpful. We've mentioned a few times you started your website, which is amazing. You're appearing on our show today. What are your future plans for continuing to build awareness around lipedema?
my future plans would be, I would love to share with the lipedema community what carnivore has done for me and the changes in my body. Um, There's Fat Disorders Resource Society conference that's annual every year. I went to my first conference this year in April and met a lot of great people, doctors that listen. It was wonderful. The conference is for physicians and therapists, but also for patients as well. And the next one next year is in St. Louis. So I would love to go to that. I see these women who have surgeries for lipedema. There's lipedema extraction surgeries that can be done, but a lot of them progress. And I feel like if I get these surgeries, I feel like I'm not going to progress because I finally found something, a diet that actually works. And the diet that's recommended for lipedema is an anti-inflammatory diet. So they're telling you not to eat butter, not to eat fat, or not to eat red meat. And,
It's
you
ridiculous.
know, yeah, at the conference, they, said there wouldn't be any butter or red meat, and they served, chicken breasts and salmon. Everything had nightshades. It was, they had spinach, they had all the high oxalate foods, and that's what a lot of these women are eating. And I mean, if that's great, if you can eat that and your lipedema doesn't progress, but a lot of women are progressing, and I think they need to know about oxalates. They need to know about the alkaloids and nightshades, which I could go on with that and explain that in more detail. But the deficiency in those enzymes, and then the studies on mice with butyrylcholinesterase. That's another thing that people need to know, that deficiency that causes the issue with nightshades, that the mice that have this deficiency, or the knockout mice, I should say, they became obese on the same diet as regular mice. And so
Wow.
they know that this enzyme is involved in fat accumulation and the hormone ghrelin. And people need to know this stuff, because nightshades are considered health foods. And that was my mistake, is I initially took them out on that detox diet, but right after that detox diet, I added them right back in, because at the time I couldn't find anything bad about them. I could only find that some people had arthritis pain with them. And at the time I didn't have arthritis, but I had no idea that they can cause insomnia or anxiety, or just general chronic pain, headaches, and migraines. And it all has to do with these cholinesterase enzymes. What they do is break down the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. And when acetylcholine can't be broken down by those enzymes, then it builds up. And when it builds up, then dopamine goes too low, and then you're going to have a whole lot of problems. And like all the ones I just listed. So people need to know about these things. They need to read Sally's book. And I got Sally's book promoted all over my website. And I've got Sally's book promoted in my Facebook group and my Facebook page, and everywhere, because people need to know. And I'm kind of tired of these last few months of people making me feel guilty for not eating vegetables. And Dr. Hyman's out there speaking with our government now, trying to get them to increase vegetables in diets for kids. And I'm still going to send my kids to school with a packed lunch, because adding vegetables to their meals is they're still serving processed meats. So
Yeah.
heavily processed stuff.
Yeah.
Everything's processed.
It's so ridiculous. Wow. Well, that's an amazing way to end this conversation. I just really, you've gone through the ringer and all the trauma that you suffered through in the comments and all this stuff, to be able to come out on the other side and really do your own research, be your own advocate. I think you're such a wonderful example of that. You must have been the person that coined the term gaslighting, because that was happening to you at a very, very young age throughout your entire life. It's a wonderful story. And I'm so glad you're so fired up to share this message with other people. And part of that is coming on our show and taking time to do that today. So really appreciate that. Where would you like people to go to find you, to connect with you and your work?
Yeah. So my website, I just barely launched, and it's thehealingblossom.com. I plan to share information not just about lipedema, but also EDS and the diets and everything. And I'm building that now. I also have a Facebook page that you can find, the Healing Blossoms. And then if you're interested in learning about nightshades and cholinesterase inhibitors and the butyrylcholinesterase deficiency, I have a nightshade-free and cholinesterase inhibitors sensitivity support group. And I've got over 1,000 members of people all over the world that discovered nightshades were a problem and have joined my group to try and figure out why. So we've got people with allergies, mast cell issues, histamine issues, which are actually related to that butyrylcholinesterase deficiency. And also, people with intolerances and autoimmune diseases, and people have figured out that nightshades are a problem, and my group's growing, and I try to share the information about why they may be so sensitive more than others regarding that gene variant on the Bucci gene. So
Yeah,
all of that is there in my Facebook group.
That page, okay, I was just going to ask, that page is also on Facebook?
Yes, it's a group. It's not a page. But people are welcome to join the group. And we've got several posts. I have a wonderful lady named Michaela that's in Germany, and she's got all of this stuff in German through her Facebook page to share this information. And she's got that genetic variant as well. So it's been a place for me to connect with other people that were experiencing similar issues. and then anybody that has any kind of nightshade sensitivity can join it. But I try to explain it there in easy way, because it's a complicated issue with all those cholinesterase enzymes and the neurotransmitters, but I try to explain everything in a simple way. And I'm still learning all the time. I mean, Michaela in Germany's got it. She understands the whole mast cell issues and histamine issues, and I haven't digested that yet. So.
Interesting. Well, that group has to be very validating, and I'm sure very important for so many people out there who are suffering and not getting answers from the diets the way that you did. So I just think your work is absolutely wonderful, and your desire to share it is amazing. And I hope it goes really well. I hope you connect to the people that you need to connect with when the time is right. But again, it's so cool to hear your story and to host you on the show today. We really appreciate you and appreciate your story. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes, thank you so much for letting me share my story. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was such an honor to have you, Angela. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.